Welcome to the channel, Hayward here. Headshots. Does the word headshots just make you groan with boredom as a thing you have to do as a photographer, or maybe you enjoy them? If you don't enjoy them, I'm going to change that today. I'm going to go through how I do headshots, lens, posing, and lighting. We're going to show you how it can be really fun because it needs to be. Someone needs to be having a good time to look good. I have a sample session I'm going to be using today of Isabella. She's a young lady who wants to get into modeling, and she needed a couple of headshots for her portfolio to help her get into it. These are going to be true headshots, not full-length modeling poses. So they really are headshots, but with a little modeling twist. Let me show you a quick overview of this session. It was a whole lot of fun. Okay, here we go. Let's go around the studio real quick and I'll show you the setup I used for this session. Okay, here's our setup. We're using my Canon EOS R, the Canon 85 f2 lens. We're using triggers, old style dumb triggers, tethering into my laptop. There's the tether cable. Pretty much my basic lighting setup, 45 degrees off with a 1200 watt key light. 45 degrees the other direction into a silver reflector, which gives me a little more distance actually. We've got a background light with a grid and barn doors, and I've got an edge light with egg crates. And my overhead light is a homemade reflector grid. I'll have links to all the gear you see in the comments below as usual. Now, I didn't use all the lights you see in this setup for every shot. That's the full setup. Mainly there were two important lights, the 1200 watt second key light with the 6-foot softbox and the strip light egg crate 320 second watt edge light. They were 45 degrees opposing to each other, and those are the really two key lights. There's a silver reflector 45 degrees off the key light for fill. So it's really a two light setup with a reflector. Here's the lighting diagram to show you at a high level. You'll also notice that there's a light at the middle top. That's a hair light, that's not a background light. For a high key image I shot for this session, I do use a background light. That's the one with the grid I showed you earlier. But for the low key, darker images, I don't use it. It's two lights and a silver reflector. Okay, that's the lighting overview. It might seem fast and loose because it is. If you've watched the channel for any length of time, you know my favorite expression is to taste. So I'll do a lighting setup, I'll get into the moment, and I'll start putting flags up and modifiers and this and that because of what I see. You have to be flexible. You got to go with what you see, what the session gives you, as you saw in the little behind the scenes at the beginning of this video. Okay, let's talk about the lens. The lens is my 85 f2 Canon. Now, I've done another video on this lens, by the way, that's gone into it in detail, so I'm not going to talk too much about why this is my lens of choice, but the background is blank. There's no background bokeh. So what's important to me in this session is that there's a good level of focus on Isabella because I don't know how these images are going to be used. They may be printed large for all I know. I don't know. So it's got to be in focus from nose to head, right? So it's f8 for me. And since the background's blank, bokeh's not an issue. So f8 lens, you'll be surprised how good it is. And that's why I choose it. Also, of course, I'm using my EOS R, my regular camera. Many other videos on that as well. There may be a change in the future, but not right now. And it's perfect for what I'm doing here. Now, if you're not used to using prime lenses that you can't zoom in and out with, you're going to have to do this thing called foot zoom. With a prime lens, you have to foot zoom, physically move the whole camera. Does it make sense? Foot zoom is you physically have to move the camera in and out. I know it sounds simple, but you gotta be aware that you're gonna have to be able to do that when you choose your focal length. That's another reason I like the 85. It lets me be close enough to the subject and still have proper framing. If I was going full length, I'd have to be quite far away to use the 85. I might consider a 50. If I needed an ultra close-up, I might consider 100. Those are the decisions you have to make. Okay, we've talked about lighting, we've talked about the lens. Let's talk about posing. And this may be the thing that gets a lot of photographers and challenges them because they have to work with the subject, the model, whatever. And that's the challenge for a lot of people. One of my first photography instructors said, if you're an introvert, you're going to have to get a personality transplant right away to be a professional photographer. And that's true. You've got to have a rapport with your subject. Whether this is a portrait, a commercial photo shoot with a model, either way, a commercial photographer and a model have to be on the same page or the work will look wooden. If you're working with an amateur or just a regular portrait client, you have to set them at ease. No matter how you position them, if you don't have a rapport with them, they're not comfortable, they're not feeling good, they'll never look good. No matter how you position them, it'll look like those old ancient 1800s things where they had head vices. You don't want that. You want loose, you want flowing, you want relaxed, and the only way to get there is to be relaxed. So some of the details with headshots. Headshots to me are very precise and technical because all you've got is this small piece of someone in the frame. So little micro movements and expressions make a huge difference. That's the number one reason I shoot tethered, as you saw in the overview. So the model or subject and I can look at each other in the images as we're shooting them for feedback, for instance. So I can say, well, I think this, or you think that, and we're talking to each other. We're establishing a dialogue. Very, very important for posing. I like to establish a vocabulary. Body turn, head tilt, right? And just doing those three things and saying, okay, turn your body or turn your head or tilt your head makes a huge difference to get what you're after, because just a little bit of a head turn, like the light will be in my glasses if I tilt my head up too much, right? It doesn't take much with headshots. I mean, we're talking little things. So you'll see me working. When you work with your subject, you have to be very precise in what you're seeing, and I recommend tethering to have a dialogue with your subject. Beyond that, it's the basics of photography. Do you want short lighting, broad lighting? And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to leave that to another video. You know, how much crop do you want? This, that. It's a lot of it's to taste, and you're going to have to look at when your subject looks their best. Be sure to ask them if they have a favorite side. No matter what you see, honor their choice. What I like to do is I say, hold your hand up like you're doing a selfie with a phone. If it's a younger person like Isabella here, that will show you many things, because people today see themselves a lot more than they ever have. So posing is almost the 60 to 70% of a good headshot. There we go. Lighting, lenses, and posing, an intro to headshots the way I do it. If you found this enjoyable and learned something from it, I would hope you would consider a like and maybe a subscription to the channel. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until the next video, cheers.